go ahead and get started.
Yeah, nobody's there, so let's go.
Okay. I want to thank you guys for being here today. I'm Suzanne Eichholtz. I'm the Director of School Counseling at Heritage. And just so I know, because we've kind of shifted our sequence of this year, and we've really kind of said, hey, come on to this if you didn't make it to the 9th grade night, or if you want a refresher. So did anybody make it to the Rising 9th grade night earlier this month? Okay. All right. So that is fine. We've got something for everyone. But if you did, it's the same presentation, but I'm also more than willing to get a chance to answer any more questions. You know, if you just felt like that was a ton of information, I want to see it again, that's great. So that just tells me that we'll kind of start from the beginning. And if you have questions during it, I'm very open. I like this setting because it's a bit more informal. So please feel free to ask. If I'm looking at the time and feeling like you guys will never get out of here, I might stop and put the questions towards the end, but we'll just kind of take it as it goes. And feel free if you need to have coffee at any point to get up and help yourself. So welcome. If you guys haven't done the math already, your students are going to be class of 2024 for us at Heritage. So I know for me that is always kind of a splash of cold water when I look at that number. I'm sure for you all it might be as well. For how many of you is this your oldest, your baby? Okay. Which makes sense why you're here. That's great. So you are going to survive. And if we had one or two that did not raise your hands, that means that they are the ones you can turn to for advice, for survival tips and for wisdom. But we know that there's a lot of emotions that go with this transition. Some are of excitement and others are from some stressors. So we're going to try to talk about that a little bit today as well. Because we know that sometimes this is what it feels like, right, when you're thinking of the transition to high school. But what I want to assure you is that we have a lot of support that's in place at Heritage to support not only your student, but you all, and not only with the transition to 9th grade, but each year that they're with us at Heritage. So I'm going to try to familiarize you all with that, make sure you know where to go if you need support, whom to contact, and answer any questions you might have. So we did send out a survey. We got some responses back. You can take a look. These were some of the main themes that we heard from you all, and I always see kind of heads nodding. And we asked you, what were you kind of most excited about with the transition? And we asked you what you thought maybe your student was most excited about, and then what were you a little nervous about? Because as I said, it's a time for both. So some themes that we saw when we asked you what were you a little worried about, or thinking about, and that was course selection. You want to make sure that your student was picking the right courses. And then once they've done that, once you've worked to get those courses selected, how are they going to handle that workload? Which are very good questions. We want you to be thinking about that. We also want to support you in that. You also had some concerns, it was on your mind, about their social adjustment to high school, and that is a big focus for us. We also have a lot of resources aimed towards that, and I'm going to introduce those to you as well. And then just worried about some risky behavior. The pool is bigger, the students are older, what to expect as far as maybe some choices your students might be exposed to as they get older, and that's a fair question, so we want to support you in that as well. But there's also excitement that comes with it. From your responses, you were excited to see the independence that they're gaining, which is appropriate. It's a very exciting time. You were excited to see the academic opportunities that are in front of them, the courses that they're exposed to, their options for picking classes broaden, and that is exciting. The extracurricular opportunities, hopefully at this point you've come to Heritage for our games, our concerts, our plays, and it's a very exciting time. And then just growth and new beginnings, watching your child develop and kind of make that transition into adulthood. So as I said, we have a lot of support in place, and I'm going to introduce you to some of the language that we use. You've probably heard it at Harper Park as well. At all the high schools, as well as the middle schools, we have what's called a unified mental health team. What that means is that is basically our school counseling department, okay, so all of our school counselors, but we also have a full-time school psychologist as well as a full-time school social worker and we share our student assistant specialist. So I'm going to show you those faces, get those in front of you, but I also have some late breaking exciting news in that we are anticipating getting possibly 2 more counselors, which means that our ratios will shrink. So this is nice for you all because you're starting, so hopefully we'll have the alphabets nice and set for you guys, because as we do our counselor assignments at Heritage and at high school, our aim is consistency as well. But while your counselors at Harper Park and at middle school typically follow you with the grade, we do it by last name. And that's nice because siblings are often with the same counselor. If siblings have last names, we still put them with the same counselor. Have different last names. So these are some of the faces. Currently we have 5 counselors. Again, hopefully we can increase that number and decrease the ratio. Myself, and you can see what the alphabets break down to at this point. So during the Rising 9th grade night, we also had some guest speakers here. Miss Kate Tenuzo, our school psychologist, Miss Leslie Saunders, our school social worker, and Miss Megan Marshall, our students assistant specialist. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of go through their portions of the presentation, but we also, we had recorded everything, or we thought we had recorded everything, and then the sound didn't work. But we will re-record the presentation that we gave. They will re-record their section as well by ourselves, looking very cool in our offices doing it. And we will post that as well so that you have that entire piece in case there's more that they want to add to their sections. All right, but we were very fortunate to have Ms. Kate Tenuzo as our school psychologist, and just the way that our Unified Mental Health team interacts with each other, it's a very much a team approach. So the main point of contact for your student with social emotional, anything social emotional, is the school counselor. But we are housed together, we work very closely together, and if we feel that it's a situation where we could use a team approach and maybe make sure that there is another person, a trusted adult in front of your student that they know, hey, if my counselor is busy, I can go see Ms. Tenuzo or Ms. Saunders or Ms. Eichholz. So that is our goal, and I feel like it's made us stronger in that capacity, and I'm excited about that. So Ms. Kate Tenuzo is our school psychologist. And this is, as I said, this will be posted. Also, I'm just kind of going to touch on it here as well. So she shared during the presentation just about some of the supports available for our students. And then we're going to go through kind of what to expect with that social emotional transition. And also, as a parent, what's the point where you should maybe be thinking, you know what, maybe it's time to reach out. Maybe this is not just the typical ups and downs. So as I said, we have much in the form of social, emotional, and academic supports for students. We have it at the individual level as well as whole class presentations. We've recently completed our signs of suicide kind of booster presentation. Everyone is given that classroom lesson, and then we revisit it. And we like that because it's been kind of reframed into a very positive message focusing on sources of strength and those traits that research has shown that if you're strong in these areas, it's going to help your resilience to get through tough times. So we have kind of the whole gamut of tiered support for social emotional needs of our students. We have small groups that are run, and Ms. Tenuzo has a specific role in supporting that as well. And as I said, if you are reaching out to your school counselor, maybe with a concern about social emotional, Ms. Tenuzo and Ms. Saunders also said, hey, throw us on the email, because then we can all kind of be there to support, and then we can tag team as needed with your student. So this is a little background on the specific role of the school psychologist. As we said, they work very closely with the school counselors and the school social workers. Okay, and as I was watching Ms. Tenuzo do her portion of the presentation, she talked about some typical behaviors that you might see in the transition. I saw a lot of heads nodding, you know, and it was very good. She pointed out that teen brains, you know, they are still developing. So even in the best case scenario, you do need to be prepared for some mood swings, you know, possible resistance to following directions and heeding advice. Some bouts of sadness and anger are typical. Wanting more independence, that's what you're excited about. They're excited about it too, and that can sometimes be a dance at home. As we we said, their brains are still developing, so sometimes there can be impulsive or irrational thinking and behavior, possible poor decision making. Seeking insight and support from peers over adults. Their peer group is it for them right now. And so you'll hear us later emphasize that link with their peer group is very important as a parent to help support your students, because sometimes they are talking to them as opposed to the adults. Staying up late, difficulties waking up in the mornings. Some of you might already be experiencing this. Feeling overwhelmed about the future, whether they express it to you or not. Some reluctance in making some decisions. Perfectionistic behavior. So you could get, depending on your student, both ends of the spectrum. You know, you could have a student who is very okay with little to no effort, and you could have a student who is just racking their brains and really beating themselves up about the fact that they feel like they're not doing well enough. And that is all within the realm of normal, you know, but we're here to support you in that. It's good to go into it with your eyes open and kind of know what kind of behaviors you might be seeing, and that's part of it. Talked about struggles getting up in the morning. Some of them might have some anxious feelings about starting a new school, you know, and especially starting a new school level. And that can look a little different, you know. They might not come right out and say that to you. You might hear things like, I feel sick, I can't go to school, you know, or you know, I'm not doing anything anyway, which we all know is not the truth. I'm too tired, I can't stay awake at school. So if you're starting to hear that in the form of resistance for school attendance, that could be some, you know, anxious feelings. That's a great point to reach out to us for support. All right, so everything we talked about, that doesn't mean that you're going to experience all of those things, or that all of those things will be the big flavor as you transition to high school. But it's, like I said, it's better to go in with your eyes open and know kind of where to reach out. And when what you're seeing kind of reaches a point where, you know what, I need to involve some extra support. So if you're seeing these changes, either changes in appetite, changes in sleep, changes in mood, and it's not just kind of your typical ups and downs, it either lasts for an extended period of time or the severity of it is high. Those are some signs where you should really be reaching out to us to get some extra support. Severity and length. If you're seeing increased isolation at home, wanting to spend too much time in their bedroom, they all use technology. You know, that's not a warning sign, but if you're really having constant struggles over that and it's paired with any of these other warning signs, you know, reach out to us. Mr. Newsom made a great point of their writing, you know, whether that's online, over texting, other means of communication. If they are writing about feelings of feeling depressed, feelings of suicide, thinking about death or dark thoughts, it is never a bad idea to reach out, okay? And we are more than happy to support you through that. If you see changes in behavior, anger that's out of context or out of the ordinary for your student, constant irritability and negative mood, refusal to complete work, grades dropping, skipping classes, not participating in other activities with families or friends, or drug use, deceitfulness about their whereabouts and what they're doing with friends, appearing high, asking for money every day, and no reason why. So I mentioned our student assistant specialist, and she is extremely well versed in being proactive towards preventing substance use in our students. So we are fortunate to have Miss Marshall, and you'll see her slides and hear her recording as well to touch on that a bit more. Okay, so some suggestions for how to kind of smooth that transition. When I heard her say this, I thought it was a great point. Just having that language in your everyday conversations about the counseling department, about the supports available, even if you think it's just kind of brushing over them, the more it's in your everyday vernacular, the easier it will be for them to draw upon it when they get in that crisis situation, you know. So if you do end up in a point where you feel like their behavior is extremely concerning, if you've kind of worked that into your everyday conversation, it's not going to be as jolting for, what do you mean I need to go speak to my counselor? You know, who is this counselor? Although we know they've done a great job at Harper Park laying that groundwork. Including that in your conversation will kind of help facilitate that. She pointed out the perks of communicating electronically with teachers. and that is for the students as well as you all. That's a great way to reach out if you have concerns. Maintaining positive communication, knowing who your child's supports are at home and at school, reminding your child that they're going to make mistakes, and then that's okay because that's how you learn. She talks about the growth mindset. So if you're not familiar with that, that's just the idea that it's not a permanent situation if you're not feeling great. If you didn't pass a test, it's not that you're stupid and you'll never get it. It's that you don't have that information and that mastery of that skill yet. So helping with that growth mindset. Okay, so that was from Miss Kate Tenuzo. Now this is Miss Megan Marshall, our student assistant specialist. And we currently share her. My hope is that at some point we will all have a permanent student assistant specialist at the high school level at least as well. But she is wonderful and she's a great asset to our team. And let me reassure you that the first part, this is not all high school, okay? So I know we're going into the depths right off the bat here. But we just want to give you all the information and make sure you know where to turn for support. But in the spectrum of preparation for 9th grade, we're also going to go through an example of how to, solve your GPA, how to calculate your GPA and all of that. So we're going to start kind of heavy at the beginning, but we'll lighten it up a little bit. Miss Marshall is very good at just making sure that you're aware of kind of what to look out for. As you all had mentioned, there are some concerns just about what's out there and some activities that you might not be wanting your students to get involved in, specifically drug and alcohol use. And she said, just in general, here are some things to look for. And not all of these are causational, they might be correlational, but just some warning signs if you're seeing more than one here. Bloodshot eyes or smell, skipping class or school, loss of interests, staying out, sneaking out, lying, manipulation, stealing or legal problems, poor grade, isolation, change of friends, mood swings, conflict with parents, and extreme privacy. Okay, whereas you used to just be able to walk into your student's bedroom unannounced, they didn't care, all of a sudden they're super concerned about you coming into their space. They're asking for money, they've not done that before. These are those things that should be setting off kind of your parent spidey senses to be on the lookout to see if there's anything different going on with your child's behavior than has been before. And when in doubt, should trust your parental instincts, act quickly. Early identification and prompt intervention is most helpful. Ask for help. And that would come in the form of you all can reach out to your school counselor, and if you're saying, hey, I've got concerns about this, I don't know where we are with it, but do you think Miss Marshall could meet with my student, or would you be able to meet with my student? They're probably going to loop her in because of her expertise, and she will be communicating with you then as well. Validate their challenges and concerns, identify solutions, and that can enhance communication skills. So really taking the approach, which is a kind of a deep breath moment as a parent, we understand that this is a challenge. And so while your initial reaction might be, we've talked about this, you know better than this, what are you doing? And there is a place for that, but also being willing to then move on to partnering with them to get the support that they need. So just some general tips for parents. Being a good listener. The groundwork that you guys have been working on for, 14 years now, it is what's going to help you in these situations. Your students knowing that they can come and talk to you if they need anything. Setting that communication, open communication is going to be most helpful. Knowing where they are, okay, monitoring their whereabouts. Get to know their friends. As I said before, their peer group is of supreme importance to them right now. You need to know who they're spending their time with, get to know their families if possible, be the house that they hang out with if that's an option, just be involved and know who they're with. Supervise their activities, talk often. And also, Ms. Marshall emphasized helping your son or daughter have a plan. Know the reality that at some point they will most likely be exposed to a situation where they're going to have to make a choice and figure out what behavior they want to have and how to proceed. Have that open conversation. Hey, if you're at a party and this behavior is going on, and we know that that's not, along with kind of your values at this point, what words are you going to use? What are you going to say? Are you going to text me? What's our code? what have you, but go ahead and talk about that, because even if your kid is rolling their eyes through that entire conversation, you've opened that door, and somewhere in the back of their head, they have a plan. So have those open conversations. Set clear expectations and educate yourself. Okay? And she went into some detail about the alcohol and drug violation policy, which hopefully you don't have to think too much about in the future. As well as the LCPS violation policy for tobacco, e-cigarettes, and vaping. All right, and these are just some of the services available. We talked about members of our Unified Mental Health Team going into the classroom so that we hit everybody within the grade levels. Ms. Marshall does this as well with their substance abuse awareness lessons. And your students have had that since they were much younger, but it becomes more in-depth and more kind of age-appropriate and advanced as they get older. So it's very educational, and she does a wonderful job with that. Okay, and then Miss Saunders, our school social worker, she touched on just a reminder of the Unified Mental Health Team and our goals, and that is to support students at all those tiered levels. So I know I'm using that language like I do with my husband, and sometimes he's like, "You're not talking my language, Suze." And so when I talk about tiered interventions, tier 1 is something that we have available for everybody in the school. Okay, so that's where, that's our Pride Time lessons, which is our advisory, that everybody's getting that information. That's those when we're going to whole grade levels. Tier 2, that could be our small group interventions, where it's a bit more of a group environment. Tier 1, an example of tier 1 would be crisis counseling. Okay, and kind of that individual intensive. So when I say tiered approaches, it's our way to make sure that we're holistically not just reaching our most high flyers, but giving everybody that information. So we have that approach towards mental health support as well. Here's an example. Okay, we hopefully Sources of Strength is something that you've heard that vernacular. We support that at Heritage, as Harper Park does as well. And that's those 8 pieces where research has shown that if you have strength in those 8 areas of support, then it will help to boost you through those ups and downs. And it's a very positive kind of umbrella philosophy to help support students, and ultimately the research has shown that it has decreased youth suicide. So that is the umbrella approach that LCPS has kind of backed. You'll see that at Heritage, you've seen it at Harper Park. This is just a picture from one of our We're All Human walks, where the entire school walked outside of our campus and we didn't lose anybody. And they went to different stations that reinforced those supports, had different activities. They had, a bonfire at one where, writing their stressors, putting in the bonfire. Also identifying trusted adults is a big thing. We're very focused on relationships and connections at Heritage. And so for this activity, this is our tennis court. They were to identify one of their own sources of strength, an area that they could turn to if they're stressed or feeling like they're struggling, and then twisty it to the fence. They decorated our driveways. Those are just some examples of the whole school activities we've done. Small groups at Heritage, Ms. Saunders runs many of those groups, as does Ms. Tenuzo and our counselors as well. And what she'll do, you can be on the lookout for kind of an interest inventory for any small group activities to see what are the needs that you're seeing, and so she'll send that out, and based on your responses, that's how she'll determine which groups to run that year. And we talked about some of the individual supports at Heritage as well. If you're in a situation where your student has had to leave school for an extended period of time, we have a specific support that we can put in place for that as well. If they're gone, I believe it's for more than about 10 days. Ms. Saunders leads this, but there is a formalized process to help make sure that they're not just dropped back in class. And so that includes social worker, the teachers are in the loop, the counselors in the loop to really help, because that is extremely stressful, especially if you've been out for medical reasons, to then come back and feel like you have this mountain of work. So we're trying to make sure that that doesn't turn into snowballing into even more struggles. So there's a return to learn process. So I want you to hear that wording. So if you're in a situation where your student is out for a long time, know that this is an available piece, and you don't have to be the ones to start it. Just know that it's available and you'll be a part of that. Accessing supports, we are always available by email or phone. That's the entire team. Students have open access to us as well, with knowledge and record of where they are. And we're also looking to even expand that access a bit more to get a virtual kind of request for them to come see their counselor out and running by the end of this year. I do want to touch on this piece, Gaggle. Is anybody familiar with what that means? Okay, so Gaggle is tied to the LCPS Google Drive. So you know that all of your students have an LCPS account, an email account, and they often will work in their Google Drives. They do this for teamwork, projects, what have you. So it's utilized a lot. We tell them information is sent home, but it's really important for you all to know that those accounts are monitored. Not to see, what's this kid writing? But they're monitored in the fact that if there are red flagged words, it's flagged, and then an email is sent out, which is called a Gaggle alert, to the administration, to the safety team. So if that could be if a student is referring to behavior that is outside of school and legal appropriateness, drug use, violence, pornography, those get flagged, we get a Gaggle alert. We see the document directly. Also, if there is any indication of self-harm, any words that would say that they want to hurt themselves, anything having to do with suicide, bullying, anything, we get a Gaggle alert. So that can be extremely helpful. We've had some good conversations with students that might not have otherwise come across our plate. I will say that typically these students are known to their school counselors, but there is also a component to students just not understanding that what they're putting out there can be seen, and that we pay attention, and we're going to follow up if we need to. So those conversations at home are really helpful too, for you to be able to talk to your student and say, that this is not just your journal, this is LCPS. Anything that you write in there can be flagged. So having that conversation is helpful. If there's a Gaggle alert and we talk to your student, you'll be notified. And we'll work as a team to move forward with that. Also important, song lyrics. If they're charging their phone with their Chromebook, and they have inappropriate song lyrics on there, it's wide reaching. So have those educational conversations. All right. As I said, the vast majority of high school is a very positive experience for our students, but we just want to make you aware of what some of the stumbling blocks might be. Make sure you know where to turn for resources. And I would say maybe the beauty of a school counseling degree and position is that we see the whole gamut. Our 3 domains are social, emotional, academic, and career, which basically encompasses everything. So we're going to talk about everything. So I'm going to transition into freshman academics, but I'll pause. Does anybody have any questions about the social emotional transition? Okay. And if you think about it later, feel free to email me, or Ms. Tenuza, or Ms. Saunders, or Ms. Marshall. So freshman academics. Let's talk. All right, I'm going to start with the LCPS graduation requirements. Now, a lot of you all in the room said this is your first high schooler, so that's good, because I will say that these have changed a ton. I started working at Heritage in 2006, and to look back and see everything that is different now, right, it's a lot. So if you had an older student, like a much older student, they might be a little bitter about what their younger brother or sister now has to accomplish to graduate, because it's less in the testing requirement, which is good. And I'm going to try to help you understand that, but know that this will be posted. The program of studies for LCPS is posted online, and I just want you to have the background knowledge. You can refer to it, and know that counselors are meeting with students each year to make sure that they're on track for this. So it's a partnership, but we definitely make sure that they know what's going on. Okay. So the two diplomas I'm going to focus on today are the Standard Diploma and the Advanced Studies Diploma. Do those titles sound familiar? Okay, so let me give you a little history about those two, a little history lesson. The Advanced Studies Diploma was created to ensure that if your student is applying to a four-year college, they can say, yep, I've met all the requirements that you are asking me as far as coursework. So if that college says, well, we have a world language requirement, they can say, oh, I got that. If they say, well, we really need 4 credits of math, you can say, yep, I have that. So it's structured to make sure that those broad requirements for a four-year university, you've covered your bases. Now, how they do in those classes is a different story, obviously. But as far as the coursework required, you can say, yes, I've got that. That Advanced Studies kind of gives them the structure for that. The Standard Diploma gives you more flexibility with your electives. Because the requirements are a bit less, and so you have more opportunity to dive into those elective courses. Now, that does not mean that a Standard Diploma student is not going to a four-year school. That's not what it means at all. You know, you could be off by 1 science credit and have a transcript full of AP courses and what have you. You get a Standard Diploma in name, still a fabulous candidate for a four-year school. So I want to give you that structure, let you know kind of where this is coming from, and see if you have any questions. So the Standard Diploma, for the coursework, it's 4 credits of English. And when I say credit, I don't mean you have to take English 10 honors or you have to take an AP. It's just you have to get that English 10 credit. So for example, the English 12 credit could come from English 12A, the academic, that counts. It could come from AP Lit, that counts. It could come from English 12 dual enrolled. All of those counts. We're just talking about the fact that you got this credit, not the level at which you took it. So 4 credits of English. That's typically English 9, 10, 11, 12, unless you're one of our EL students and we have a bit more flexibility with where we can start with that. You need 3 credits of math. Starting at Algebra 1, you need 3 credits of science. You need 3 history and social sciences. Now, what you need to know about that is that the choice there is between what we still call World 1 and World 2. And so often your student is automatically going to take that World 1. So that choice is typically right there for you. But the U.S. Virginia history, which comes junior year, and the government are required. So that's where that choice is. You can't say, okay, I'm going to take the first 3 levels and I'm not going to take it senior year. It has to be World 1 or World 2, which is typically freshman or sophomore. You have to take U.S. Virginia, which is junior, and then government. Health and PE, everybody needs 2 credits. Okay, health and PE 9, health and PE 10. The World Language, Fine Arts, Career, and Tech Ed, you must have 2, and one of those must be within a fine or practical art or a CTE. So that could be choir, that could be business. There are lots of options for those electives. You must have the 1 total credit of Econ and Personal Finance, and those are presented as half-year courses each. That is a graduation requirement. If your student chooses to take AP Econ, that counts for both as well. And then a total of 4 electives. And within those 4 electives, 2 have to be sequential. So when we say electives, just think anything that doesn't directly go to those requirements, counted as an elective. Okay? But let's do a little math, right? The total there is 22. All right, a full course load is going to be 7 credits, and they have a study hall for each year, right? So if they come into high school with no previous high school credits, which is absolutely fine, 7 credits, 7 credits, 7 credits, 7 credits, you're at 28 if they pass everything. Okay, so there's some wiggle room. Obviously, our goal is for them to take a full load as appropriate and pass everything, so that 22 shouldn't be too scary. So that's a coursework for the Standard Diploma. Now the Advanced Studies Diploma, still 4 credits of English, okay? But now we're talking about 4 credits of math, okay? And you have to, as I said, start with Algebra 1 and go on through. 4 credits of science, 4 credits of history and social science, so there's no longer an option of World 1 or World 2. And I'm saying World 1, World 2. You'll see it officially as World History to 1500 or World History 1500 and beyond. It's World 1 and World 2. Those are the 9th and 10th grade credits. Health and PE 10, Health and PE still 2 credits. But here's that world language requirement I talked about, and you can complete this 2 ways. One is to take 3 of one world language. Another is to take 2 of one and 2 of another. Okay, both will check that box. Now, you'll get into the questions of, well, my student started this, really early in Harper Park, they're done. That's where those details come in. If your student is looking at a 4-year school, you want to keep that language in there as long as possible. That's what they would love to see. Now, obviously, you need to make the best decisions for your student, make sure that you still have balance in their schedule, but it is not a good idea to stop that language after freshman year if they're officially done. Yes, they've met the requirement, but to be competitive, I'm going to have it in their schedule for a little bit longer. But maybe they try another language, and that's a great option. Fine Arts or CTE, they need 1 credit. Econ and Personal Finance, there's that again. And then sequential electives, 2 additional sequential electives, and then 1 additional elective. Okay, so there again, that total is 26. Okay, so still attainable. Now the testing, this is the piece that has been very streamlined, but these are your requirements. For English, this has not changed. You need to pass 2 English SOLs, okay, and those are attached with the English 11 curriculum. So whether your student is taking English 11 academic, if they're taking English 11 honors, or if they're taking AP English language, all of those align with the English 11 curriculum and will prepare your students for their reading SOL and their writing SOL. And we have that their junior year because we want to give them as much time to prepare for it, but still not put it off to the last minute. Okay, so we're going to really do a good job working with them, and our English department is wonderful. So we have really good results with students of all levels for our English SOLs. You need 1 math SOL, 1 science SOL, and 1 social science SOL. Okay? So the goal is that you knock these out early and you're done testing, but if that is not the case, let's say that you were in Algebra 1, you took that SOL, it didn't go so well, we're going to work with you. Our teachers are going to work with you and help you prepare to retake that test and have success on it. Now, there are other additional certifications. CPR, that comes with the Health PE 9 curriculum, and so your students have to be trained in it and exposed to the hands-on practice, which they will be during that course, okay, and then they'll have met that requirement. CTE, you need to have a CTE credential. Now this is for the standard diploma only, and it's built into a personal finance curriculum to prepare them for the WISE test, which has to do with personal finance, personal financial literacy, and so they're prepared for that during that class. That is one way to do it. That's the way that we have built in, so it's easiest. But also, if they take another, CTE class and they're MOS certified, or they have workplace readiness, there are other ways to meet that credential. But that is the one that we ensure that every student within personal finance has that. Now that is for standard diploma only. However, stranger things have happened than a student just going gangbusters and doing great on track for the advanced studies diploma. You get mono senior year, you take off that 4 science, you're officially on track for the standard. If that's a late in the game decision, we're watching this. I want you guys to be aware of that. Also why we build it in as much as possible to everybody's curriculum for the personal finance, okay? So typically kids are pretty good about knowing which track they're on, but we want you to know that that is a piece where you can opt to have them make sure that they have that checked off, even if they're going for advanced. You want to just kind of safeguard against possible hiccups later on. And typically our kids do really well with this. Okay? So now we're going to talk about the GPA. Okay? And my hope is that you all leave here knowing how to calculate it, knowing that it's not, really a mystery, and feeling kind of empowered with that. So I'm going to do my best to explain it in layman's terms. Your GPA is your grade point average, okay, which is basically a fraction. It's your quality points over attempted credits, okay? So right here is the grading scale, and these are quality points. So, just in vernacular, you hear somebody say, they're a 4.0 student, they're an A student. Well, an A is a quality point assignment of 4 points, okay? So your anchors there are an A gets 4 quality points, a B is 3, a C is 2, a D is 1. If you fail the class, you don't get any quality points. And within that, we have our pluses and our minuses, which either adds 0.3 or takes away 0.3, okay? So an A minus, A is 4, take away 0.3, that's 3.7 quality points built into the numerator of your fraction. Okay, now we've got that as our base, but we also have some GPA bumps most people are familiar with. So for an honors course, added onto the final quality points, you get an additional 0.5, okay? So if your student had a B as a final grade in Algebra 2 Trig, okay, which is an honors class, instead of a 3 going into that top part of the GPA fraction, it's a 3.5. Okay, but what's important to know and to clarify with your students as well is that B does not magically change to an A. Okay, that B remains the same. That B is what's on the transcript. It's just in this fraction that goes to create the GPA where that bump takes place. Dual enrollment and AP courses have an additional 1.0 bump. So if your student got a C, a 2.0, in an AP or DE class, a 3.0 goes into the fraction. However, that C is still on their transcript, okay? So that's the basis of the GPA. We're gonna do a little math here, hopefully the coffee's kicking in. Let's take this example schedule, right, for a freshman, and we're just gonna figure out their freshman GPA at the end of the year. We're not gonna worry about cumulative adding in anything they've done before at this point. But if these were your final grades for these classes, your year-long GPA, let's say you took geometry and got a final grade of a B, you get 3.0 right here into the numerator of your GPA. English 9 academic, final grade A minus, 3.7. Research biology, which is the honors level research, final grade of a C plus, that's a 2.3 for the C plus, and then you get a 0.5 for the honors bump. So you're putting in a 2.8 here. This is that world history to 1500 academic, final grade of B plus, 3.3. Health PE 9, A plus, 4.3. Men's choir, which is a fabulous elective, if any of you have young men wanting to sing, our director's great. 4.0 for an A. And Spanish 2, let's say they got a final grade of a B, 3.0. Okay, so that's your numerator. And then we're going to divide by the attempted credits. So if the class is a year long, it's 1 credit. If it's a semester, it's a half year, but that's like AP GPA calculations, so we're not going to worry about that. So on the bottom, that's 7 classes, you're going to divide by 7. That is a year-long GPA. Your GPA then is 3.44. Okay, if these are the grades you received. So let's think of that and put it back in letter language. A 3.44 is between a B plus and an A minus average. Okay, so you look at the letter grades they've got, and that's about right. Okay. Now, many of our students come to us with high school credits. And so I want you to know what that means as far as the GPA that they enter high school with. So if they've taken Algebra 1 and above at Harper Park, those are all math credits. Those are all high school math credits. Those are counting into their GPA. If they take any world language courses, those are counting into their GPA. Those are high school courses. You also have a tech elective that would count as a high school course. So if they are coming to us and they have within their middle school transcript these 3 high school classes, for example, they've taken Algebra 1 as an 8th grader, they got a B plus. They took Spanish 1 as a 7th grader, got an A minus. Spanish 2 as an 8th grader, got a C. This is the GPA they're starting with. This is their cumulative high school GPA. Okay, so that's a 3.3, 3.7, 2.0 over 3 attempted. So they're starting with a 3.0 GPA, which is a B average. So this is the conversation. This is the time to have those conversations to say, does that work for us? You know, this is your only chance to have a do-over is before you enter high school with your classes. If your student decided to stretch themselves and say, hey, I want to take a high school course at the middle school level, we recognize that they were a middle schooler when they were taking it. So we're going to give you the option to reassess as a family before you come to us and say, no, I'm going to do that over again. Okay, and that's called expunging. And it's a very specific process, and it is one that I will say it's one of the kind of few black and whites that we have as far as yes or no. If you miss that deadline, there's no option after that. Okay, it's a very strict deadline. And this is not a process that we do once you're in high school of saying, no, I want that off my transcript. Okay, so this is your opportunity. So this is your chance to look at that. Okay, so if you're thinking, you know what, we've talked about as a family that your goal is going to be to reach AP Spanish, or to ultimately you want to be fluent in Spanish, so you're going to keep on going. I don't know that this, I really don't know that your basis was what it could have been here. And we talk as a family and say, I want you to take Spanish 2 over again. Get this off your transcript, okay? If you're taking that class over again, that one doesn't need to stay there, okay? But you need to fill out that expunge form. If you look and you're like, no, we worked really hard for that C. That was a strong effort for my student, and we're gonna take it and move on, and you can switch languages and get your next 2 requirements. That's absolutely your prerogative. You keep it on there, you move forward. And know that the more classes you get, I mean, you saw the math, right? The more numbers get built in. It improves, you know, if your student is doing well, the more classes they take. So, you know, this is going to change kind of rapidly, but it's important you know where you're starting. All right. So again, this is for the final course grade of high school credits that are taken in middle school only. This is your only time for this. If you choose to expunge it, it will not be on your transcript, okay? But you also don't get whatever credit was awarded. So it's like, you know, if you expunge that Spanish 2 grade, you also expunge the Spanish 2 credit. So if you want a Spanish 2 credit, you have to retake it. So then it's off the books. It's not counted towards your GPA. Again, no credit is awarded. This expunge form is sent home with middle school final report card. As I said this, I realized that that's kind of antiquated since now we email those final report cards. So is that also how they can expect to get this expunge form from you all, or is that still a paper form? Do you know?
We haven't talked about it. We
Okay.
definitely have the paper form. So if we're using the paper form, it'll be sent either
Okay.
through Naviance or it'll be attached to something.
It always goes in the report card, the fourth quarter report card, paper.
But do you still mail your 4th quarter report cards? Okay.
And we'll still know.
So there you go. Okay. So then look for that in that envelope. Okay. So, and remember, every student gets a 4th quarter report card. So if you're coming into summer and you're like, wait a second, I never got that, maybe ask your student first. Hey, did you see this come home? Because they all exist. So look for that, and if you have any questions, you know, reach out. They must be returned by August 15th. Okay. And that is a really strict deadline. So take a look at it, make those family decisions early. Those forms come to us at Heritage because our counselors are the ones that are going to take it off the record. And they'll place you on that form. It'll say, are you going to retake this class? You know, and if you are, they're going to be the ones to place you back in those classes. Again, after this, there's no more mulligans. See your counselor if you have any questions. Okay. Any questions about GPA? Anything like that? Okay.
It's a
DE is dual enrollment. Yeah, so the majority of our DE classes are partnered with NOVA. And we're very proud about all the offerings we're able to offer our students. And your offerings are based on which teachers are qualified in that specific way. So they either have to have a master's in the area or have a certain number of advanced credits. We have a lot of DE options. And so the difference there is an AP course. Both are college courses taught at the high school level. An AP course, your credit transferring to a college is dependent upon how well you do on the exam. You currently have to pay for that exam, so you're gonna have to pay for the exam and then do well on it, which, you know, it has been a good option for many students. DE is different because if you get a C or better in that class, it's guaranteed credit. And so you leave there with a NOVA transcript. There's no cumulative test at the end. It's just credits ready to be transferred. Okay, and currently they're free.
are the DEs, are they taught at the high school?
Yes.
Okay, they don't go anywhere then.
No. Yeah, good question, because you know there are some school systems like California has a very robust DE program, and sometimes the kids will just go there. But when I'm talking about DE, those courses are taught by our Heritage faculty, who are duly certified Heritage and NOVA professors.
But your student has to register through NOVA.
Yes.
That's really important.
Yes.
That's a deadline too.
Mhm.
There's deadlines associated with that.
Yes, we love our deadlines. And there's a lot of paperwork that goes with it. Sometimes we feel like we're part working for NOVA and part working for Heritage, but that's okay. So yes, it's not just picking your classes with LCPS, but also doing the enrollment piece with NOVA. And when your counselor meets with you, they go over all that paperwork. I've also got on the course information webpage a whole section about DE pieces, but that's typically not an option until, usually junior year. So you have a chance to kind of get into the groove of it. Yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say, is this something we're looking at now?
No.
I mean, okay.
No,
Okay.
no, yeah. But yes, that's good to know. So a sample freshman schedule, like what's the schedule gonna look like? You're gonna have an English 9 course to some level. That could be academic, you could choose honors, those are your 2 options. You're gonna have a math course. So depending on where you are in your progression, you're gonna have a math course there. You're gonna have either earth science, either at the academic or research level, or if you choose to go into biology, you must take the research level. And when I say research, that's another word for honors in this case. We just like to have many different terms. And we're going to talk about that decision because that's a really important one as well. You're going to have a world history / geography to 1500s, which is world history 1. You're going to have health PE 9. If you want to keep that door option for the advanced studies, you're going to have a world language credit in there. You're going to have an elective, and remember I said you're taking 7 credits, and you're going to have a study hall. Now that study hall doesn't necessarily go at the end of the day, it's going to go wherever the open spot in the schedule is. We have study halls every block. Okay? And then you'll see advisory on there, that's our pride time. So we meet every Wednesday for 20 minutes. We have a group of about 14 students, and the goal is that that group remains the same, except for the graduating seniors and incoming 9th graders. So that opens the door to another trusted adult in the school. We do a lot of our character lessons that way, whole school information, and it's just another group of students, mixed grade level, maybe from different groups of the school that they might not have known otherwise. So it's a really nice opportunity, and that's every Wednesday. And every licensed staff in the building has a pride time group. All right, so your choices specifically for your freshmen, okay, and we're talking about those level decisions. So English 9, we, at the Rising 9th grade presentation at the end, we had a question and answer session in the library where we have a ton of our teachers there housed by their different departments to answer questions. We do that every year. So we kind of combined about 5 different things that night, but at the end is open to all grades. So each year, if you have more questions about the level and those decisions, feel free to bring them to that forum or shoot us an email at any point. All the contact info for our departments are online as well. So English 9 academic versus English 9 honors. Here's what I want you to see. Okay, the focus, right? Both on reading, writing, research, vocab. Both are going to prepare you for those SOL competencies. For English 9 academic, they're going to reinforce the basic writing skills. But if you're choosing honors, there's an expectation, an assumption of basic writing skills, and they're going to work on mastery. Okay? You're going to advance to complex writing. It's an increased rigor, a faster pace, and there's an expectation of more independent learning. There's GPA bump with the honors. And this line is something that we encourage our teachers to just put right out there for you, because as you're determining the schedule, this is really important. The academic, you can expect about 30 minutes of homework in between. We have a block schedule, so you have 4 classes each day. So in between classes, so that's like if they have it on Monday, they'll have it on Wednesday. You can expect 30 minutes of homework for this class at the academic level. If you're taking the honors, you need to expect 1 to 1.5 hours. So that's a big, that's possibly one of the most important differences. All right, and then they're both preparing you for the normal summative assessments that you have, but then in honors, there's a year-long honors common assessment portfolio, which is required as well. Okay, and just other general considerations. Does your student like English? And that's not to say that they get a cop out of whatever they just don't like. but it is important as a family for you to know what that's gonna look like. You know, if they have those English 9 honors assignments, what's that gonna look like at your kitchen table when it's time for them to sit down and do it? Are they at that point where they can independently do this? Or are you maybe at the point where